Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of your Circle of Influence podcast. I'm your co host, Dr. Monikah Ogando.
I'm Amy Walker, and today we are talking about resilience in business. And what do you do when it feels like everything is falling apart? Inspired by the day that I felt like everything was falling apart and was like, what do I do about this?
Can I
Hence
just
the
quit my life?
need.
Can we just start over?
Yeah. Hence the need for resilience, because
Yes.
the answer is you could. But honestly, if you lack this quality of resilience, this is where I see these serial business hoppers, where every time you talk to them, it's a new business, a new thing, a new idea. And
Mhm.
I just think they don't know how to get past that hump. So
Yeah,
we're digging in today, resilience.
resilience. It would be wonderful if I could do all the things for all the people with all the time in the world and still get an 8 hour sleep that night.
Mm-hmm.
However, the way that constraints are set up, we think I used to think, let me speak for myself. I used to think that constraints were a punishment or a restriction. I did not until recently see constraints as a resource. And I think that's a common misconception. The fact that I only have 24 hours in a day, the fact that I only have so much energy, the fact that I only have so much to give in a different in a day or whatever, is actually part of the toolbox
Mm-hmm.
because it allows me to pace myself and to make powerful requests of when I need more time or when the deadline has to be extended, etc. Particularly because as entrepreneurs, typically whatever deadlines we have, we set ourselves.
Right.
But in the last, I want to say maybe 18 months or so, I have started to get into the practice, consistent practice of tending to myself first so that I can be available for whatever my life requires of me, that I've told it
Yeah.
to require of me. Because again, that's not an imposition. I created that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was, to give you an example, when my brother-in-law started declining in health, as many of you know, he was diagnosed with ALS and eventually died from it. This was in the middle of the pandemic. My sister got furloughed from her job, and he was the primary, not the only, but the primary breadwinner. So when he got a disability, she got furloughed. Their house went up in flames. And
Mm-hmm.
she needed to take care of the children because the children's school closed. She's like, what am I doing with no job and having to take care of these kids full time and him? I need help.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started flying down to Florida, where my sister lives, to support her with her family. Well, that meant that sometimes I had to leave my house alone for weeks at a time. And I needed that. I needed my husband's support so that I can continue to give to my family and eventually my father, who then was in hospice and so forth. And so I leaned on him a lot to be able to say, I need you to be patient with me. Even if it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like lean on him to vent or to hear me cry or to talk things out, because it wasn't that level of emotional availability. It was more
Mm-hmm.
like, I need you to not be one more thing for me to handle.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes all the support that I need. So I started to be more honest about how much bandwidth I have and how much I have to give, so that when I say yes to someone, they understand that she means that. That's not obligation. That's not a tit for tat. That's not bargaining. That's an
Mm-hmm.
honest to goodness yes. And when it's a no, it's a no. And it's just as honest.
Yeah. That's good. When you say yes, it's an honest yes. And when you say no, it's an honest no. I have people that will ask me, like, are you sure? And
Mhm.
like, if I wasn't sure, I would not have said yes.
Right.
Like I'm perfectly capable of saying no when it's really a no. And if I say
Mhm.
yes, it's really a yes. Yeah. So, it's interesting because I have had, and you have had, and we have been supporting each other during these times where we've watched each other where it, like,
Mhm.
literally things are falling apart,
Yeah.
and it's like, I've watched both of us pick ourselves back up
Yeah.
and keep moving forward. And on the outside, not everybody knows that it's really hard on the inside.
Right.
So I feel like that is a skill that you learn because
Mhm.
in my early years, when something little would go wrong, it would throw me out of the game for weeks.
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm still having hurt feelings because someone was mean to me on a
Mhm.
sales call. So no, I
Mhm.
will not be working this month, like,
This month, Lord have
yeah,
mercy.
I remember. I'm not totally, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but
But
I'm
no,
not
just a little bit.
totally exaggerating.
Right,
So,
exactly.
one of the things that I have found is I like to take a break from pain. And so what that means is like when I'm in that place where like everything is stressful and everything is hard and there are a bunch of situations that I cannot resolve in a short period of time, I like to take a break from feeling bad about all of that and be like, let me show up and do something that makes me happy and let me
Mhm.
show up and be at a higher energy level vibration. And then I'll come back to those things and decide if I want to have another like space of sadness because
Right.
I think that you need to experience all of those things, but you don't need to experience the sadness 24/7. So when you are really truly in crisis, what I do, and this is what I tell my clients to do as well, is like look at what actually needs to be done for the crisis.
Uh-huh.
That's usually pretty minimal. A lot of it is just the excess of emotion around said
Yeah.
crisis.
Yes.
And that, like, you can take breaks from that. It doesn't mean that you're not still sad or
Mhm.
you're not still grieving or you're not still like super overwhelmed, but you can give yourself a chance to
A
be like,
respite.
just let me be happy for a little bit. Let me be
Yeah.
excited for a little bit. Let me be productive for a little bit.
Right.
So I remember when I was launching my business, it was I had 2.5 months after I had had my son, my last. We're a brand new business and we're hosting this big community event that had thousands of people. The news came. I had spent like $30,000 on it. And 2 weeks before, my nephew passed away.
Mm.
And then my newborn was in the ICU, both of them from RSV. So my nephew passed away. And when I went to go be with my sister that night, she was like, your baby's really sick. You need to take him to the hospital. So now I'm in the hospital grieving my nephew, taking care of my baby, 2 weeks away from the event. And I was working, and people kept telling me, you don't need to work right now. And I was like, you don't understand. This is a break
Yeah, it's
because I
saving my
don't want to
sanity.
sit here all day and be sad.
Yeah.
I want to actually work and get progress towards the things that I'm excited about.
Right.
Um, and I think that compartmentalizing is healthy because then when I would get done doing the work and I would go back to now taking care of my son and planning for the funeral and all of those things, I felt better about doing all of that than had I just stayed in a space of grief
Mhm.
the whole
Mhm.
time.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And it also allows you some distance to get some perspective, to get some respite, to get some kind of catch your breath again.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what worked for my marriage and for my role in the family when I was going through that was that I would only be away for about 2 weeks at a time and then I'd come back home and be with my husband and just handle life and kind of like, okay, I have a routine. I
Yeah.
have a different life than this mayhem and death
Yeah.
and grief and da da da. Da. There's other aspects of it. It's not just all this. So I totally hear that. The other part that really has spoken to me is that just in the same way as our culture is all about like achieving and chasing and so forth, I think sometimes in the personal development and in the spiritual, psychological, psycho-emotional field, there's also this aspiration thing, this always seeking and never finding thing. And there has to come a point where you just are the person that you've been working to become. Like
Mm-hmm.
at some point, you're just going to have to embody the badass that you are. And it's just going to
Right.
have to be today. It's just going to have to be the moment, you know? And I think we celebrate or at least focus on in this culture this fix thing,
Mm-hmm.
this remedial thing.
I'm
And
working on.
yeah,
It's
or
like always a work in
always a
progress.
work in progress and always like needing something like it's not quite finished, it's not quite complete. And it's like, no, I'm equipped already. I have
Mm-hmm.
all the patience I'm going to need. I have all the discipline I'm going to need. I have all the love I'm going to need. I have all the, consideration or grace or whatever. It's just really, all I'm ever doing is managing my orientation. and how much I spend on a particular emotion or a particular thought, could this be better used somewhere else? To your point about, do what the crisis calls for and
Yeah.
not just getting kind of like siphoned into, oh my God, right? We see it with mothers in crises. It's funny. I saw Reese Witherspoon say this in some kind of speech that she was receiving an award, and she says, one of the most used phrases in movies is a woman that turns to the man and says, "Oh, what are we gonna do?" But in real
Right.
life, that never happens. The
No.
woman always knows what she's gonna do, and she starts bossing people around. It's like, you go over there, you get me a towel, you da, da, da. And we do what we need to do in the moment of crisis, and then once it's over and once you've handled it, okay, now we can cry, and now we can get the
Yeah.
adrenaline, and now we can be like, what the hell just happened, and journal it out and therapy it out and blah blah blah. And I just think, as cold as it might sound, I just think sometimes the key to resilience is buck up.
Mm-hmm.
Just buck up. Sometimes there's no way around it. You can't massage it. You can't psychotherapy it out. You have what you need. And if you
Yeah.
were the badass that you've been trying so hard to become, if you were her right now, would she be falling apart like this? No. She probably already
Well,
have answers. She
okay,
probably
so
have a plan in place.
here's
Mm-hmm.
another fun angle to look at this, because
Yeah.
I think this carries totally in, is that there are a ton of crises in our lives that are actually not a crisis.
Right.
Right. But
Totally.
emotionally, we're making it feel like it's this big,
Yeah.
huge thing, which
Yeah.
is exactly what I had going on the other day when I wrote this down. It's not actually a crisis. I
Mhm.
know how to fix this problem. I
Yeah.
know what needs to change. Am I having a bit of a pity party because I have to do it? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but I know what to do in order to get there. So sometimes we resist change because it's not the way that we wanted it to be. And then we tell ourselves that these parts of our business or these parts of our lives that are slowly atrophying or they're falling away, that they need to be pruned, but we don't really want to prune them. And
Mm.
so we tell ourselves it's a crisis and everything's falling apart, when in reality, you prune fruit trees every year so that they
Mm.
can grow new fruit.
Come on,
And
somebody.
so sometimes when I'm like, it's all falling apart, I have to pause and I have to be like, is it falling apart, or am I just seeing the dead growth in my tree? And am I
Mm.
just needing to prune out the dead growth? And then I can, yes, I can have the pity party. I don't actually really like doing yard work either. So I have a little bit of a pity party when I have to go help pull weeds and prune bushes too. I do
Right.
it, but I don't enjoy it. And
Yes.
that's how I feel in my business too. So I think we need to look at when we have that feeling of like, everything's falling apart, and we need to buck up our resilience. There's two different types.
Mm-hmm.
There's the resilience that is, this is a legitimate crisis, and I
Yeah.
have to take care of me first. And I
Yes.
have to compartmentalize how much time I dedicate towards taking care of the crisis and how much time I dedicate towards making my business move forward towards my dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Because no crisis gets better by having not enough money. Just saying.
Right.
Every
Come on.
crisis gets harder
That's right.
when your business falls apart. So, but
Yeah.
then there's the other sort of resilience, which is what I think you're talking about here, that part where you're like, I do know what to do. I
Mm-hmm.
do know how to take care of this. I am capable of handling this. I've handled things before. There's yet to be, I was talking to somebody who is one of my clients that's having a rough go in his business right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I was like, you need to stop telling yourself that you don't know what to do. It's like,
Right.
you have done hard things before.
Yeah.
You know what that looks like. You
That's
have
right.
stepped outside your comfort zone before. You know what that looks like. You have learned new skills. You know what that looks like. So we got to stop this story of like, I just don't know what to do. You know exactly what to do. You have honed all of these skills in your life. Maybe you haven't used them in this arena, but you know
Mm-hmm.
what to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of times it's not an actual crisis. It's
Mm-hmm.
just you got to buck up, buttercup.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. The final thing that I'm going to say about this is that this is a good opportunity to become your best advocate. And whatever parenting you did not receive from your mother, now is the time to mother yourself. Whatever parenting you didn't receive from your father, now is the time to father yourself. Whatever husbanding you didn't get from your husband, now is the time to show up like the masculine that you wish you had, you know, and to be all those things, because I am of my personal belief is that the relationships that I have, the people that are in front of me are a reflection of how I'm showing up or who I wish I could
Mhm.
be. They're all of them are mirrors. And so if there's some kind of deficiency or insufficiency that I'm noticing in, I wish my husband would show up in XYZ way. Well, that's an invitation for me to show up for myself in an XYZ way and not blame him for my lack thereof. And so this is an opportunity for you to be your own best advocate and to speak for what you need and to not confuse the needs. See, there used to be a time, Amy, when I thought that I needed some sweetness in my life and I translated that to chocolate ice cream. See, that's not congruent with my goals, but I do still need sweetness. So sometimes that sounds like a giggle fest with one of my girlfriends on the phone, or to go out for now that my daughter has dropped off her dogs in my house, to spend some time cuddling the dogs. They're always looking at me like I'm the next best thing since sliced bread or since a good bone. It's like, okay, I can use that validation in my life right now. So be your own best advocate.
I love it. And with that, we are going to wrap up this episode. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We love hearing from you. Leave us your comments. Make sure that you like and subscribe and connect. Honestly, connect. It's one of my favorite things about doing this podcast is it's all about building your circle, creating a place where you have lots of influential people that are helping you to live your best life and be on the up and up on your journey. So connect with us. I'm at Amy Walker Coach and Monikah is at Monikah Ogando, and we will see you next time, my friends.
Thanks, everybody.